Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Q&A Cafe for Wednesday, May 27th. Today we're doing the ByDesign Release highlights for 2005. There it is. Nice and bright for this Wednesday morning or afternoon, depending where you are. So today is with Laura Herculo. She is going to be presenting that for today. And if you have any questions, just put them in the questions or the chat box, and I will get to them once Laura has done her presentation portion of the session. We will be recording this, so I'll keep everybody on mute so we don't hear any background noise. And that is it. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Laura.
All right, great. Thanks, Kayla. All right, everybody. Hope you're excited. I am very excited about Feature Pack 2005. It's a pretty hardy release, and much to my happiness, it is very heavily focused in the supply chain management topics. It's been a long waited that we're starting to get a lot of new features and functions rolled out in the supply chain area. So hopefully that will be indicative of a lot more things to come for those of you that are in manufacturing and distribution. So we'll roll through this. There's a lot of content. Put this presentation together and I will send it out after. I basically took a lot of the stuff on the what's new, and then there's blogs, and then there's a lot of other, there's like one overall release blog, and then there's other subsequent other areas that haven't necessarily been highlighted in the overall release blog. So I try to cull that all together for you in this presentation, so you get to get the sense for everything that's there. And it's just to be a quick reference for you to be able to pop out if you want to start utilizing some of these new features. I'll go into as much detail as I can. I have to admit I haven't done a super deep dive on 100% of the stuff, but I've done as much as I can, and we can walk through areas. I'll kind of pop in and out of the presentation. I put some screenshots in here for you too, and kind of go through certain areas of where you need to do configuration changes and things like that, so you get a sense for what do you need to do in your system to activate some of these features and functions. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here, which is actually really neat. So let's get rolling. And we'll start in the financial management topic. So the first feature is the addition of the strict dual control on manual postings to the GL. So when you do your journal vouchers, intercompany JVs, and recurring journal entries, and manual tax entries, anything that's manually created, not system generated within the system, you can now implement what's called the strict dual control. So again, not really knowing what everybody has configured, standard out of the box functionality. Basically anybody can create and post a journal entry. Within the last year, they introduced the dual control policy, which means they basically split up. If you enable the dual control policy, it will create two new work center view authorizations, one to create the journal vouchers and then another to post. So that gets you certain restrictions with the strict, but if you actually give your user access to both create and post, they can do that from the same work center view. So that was, even though there's the dual control, you still had a way to get around it. With the new strict dual control manual postings, that inextricably cuts the tie between the post and the create and post, regardless of what work center view you have. Now, those two work center views still show up. So basically, if you want someone that can create and post if they haven't created it themselves, you would give them those authorizations. So anybody that has a strict dual control, only one person can post or create manual JVs, and the other one can post them. There's a new approval process has been implemented into the payment reversal process. So anything that's in transfer in your payment management area, you can, if you do a reversal on that can send that through to an approval process. And then there's a new profitability analysis of sales kits. at both the header and the sales kit item for returns. So being able to actually see where all of the contributions are coming from. So there's actually a really good blog. Again, I posted that in here where you can actually see sort of where does the revenue originate from on the sales kit header, and then as well as what are the contributions of the sales kit items to the cost of goods sold. And then that same level of details is also supported for a case where the sales kit items are returned. Right, and I think I have a couple of screenshots of here. So on the strict dual control journal entry, and you'll want to go into your project scope and go into the questions, and then within the financial management, accounting, general ledger area, under the general ledger, you'll have one of two options. Obviously, you can't have both on at the same time. This can be turned on and off at any point in time. So if you tinker around with it and find that it's a little too restrictive, you can go back to just that dual control principle or turn it off. It's not one of those specific settings that once you turn it on, you don't have the ability to revert back. And so once you do actually have that strict dual control principle selected, as I mentioned, you see into this either or. If you have the regular dual control principle or the strict dual control principle set on, you'll see in every area. So as I mentioned, you've got intercompany, manual, recurring, and then within your tax areas, you'll want to take note of them, so that person only having options to create those vouchers. Now, as I mentioned, this is the one that's the critical piece on the post. So you'll have posts for all these things. So post your journal entry vouchers. You'll want to select those if you have someone that you do allow to both create and post the journal vouchers. With the strict control, they won't be able to do that in the same step, but there might be a time where someone on your team is creating them and you want that other person to be able to do the posting on their behalf. Right. Okay, so this is just a quick snapshot of the profitability with the returns. So basically looked at invoice profit from a return of a product that I created today. So it was like a kit item for a bed, which had some side rails, a headboard, a footboard, and things like that. And so we had our roll up of our overall sales revenue and then the contributing cost of goods sold for that particular item. And then as I did a return, we'll see that net sales revenue at that component level as I returned one component of that kit. And then we can see that how that overall for that particular item, how that impacted the overall profitability. All right, in the human resources area, not a whole heck of a lot, but some nice areas. Now within the time recordings area, an administrator can come in and actually edit any time recordings on behalf of a team member or an employee, and then resubmit it to the PM or the line manager for approval. So there's a new function there once you do recode it to have it flow back through. So really, if you're going through and using the payroll for potentially overtime and things like that, you don't have to actually know who the manager is to go in there and make the adjustments. You can do it yourself as the admin. There's a new payroll report, but I know in a lot of cases, some of the reporting around changelog for audit is somewhat limiting in ByDesign in some of the areas. I know we can do it for like materials, customer, suppliers, and some things in bulk. With this is a new report that, again, from an audit perspective, as you're making changes to your employees, you can run reports on any employee changes. Typically for the payroll report, but it is a really nice data source to be able to show you like when you're moving, when you're transferring employees from from org unit to org unit. You also have the ability as a manager, when you're reviewing your employees' timesheets from the Managing My Area work center, you can view any of their internal comments and work descriptions. So before, that was only really visible from the project management area. Now you have the ability to view that in the Managing My Area section. Right. And then on the project management side, really more, you can also display. So when an employee is entering time, they have their standard time, and then they can enter the time for premium pay. That column was never exposed into project management, so a project manager wouldn't necessarily have visibility into releasing time that was considered or coded as overtime, which could obviously expose you to overpaying your employees. So that's now displayed, and that can be set up for approval or rejection through the project management area. Okay, and so this is just a quick, again, quick snapshot of the admin time changes. I'll pop in and just do this, kind of do this live in here, just so you can see how that works. But basically, if I'm in an employee, I can go into the admin, pop open their timesheet, and then we'll see all their time types, and then I can make any sort of adjustments. So if I go into my employees, and let's look at Tanya, and we'll edit her, actually, we will. Go into her employee times. Actually, let's do this, sorry. Let's go into the timesheet, much easier, it's where we wanna go. And if you open the timesheet, you can go into the review and correct area. And then scroll somewhere where she actually has some time entered. Right, so in here we've got kind of her actual hours worked, the number of hours. We can look and see, obviously if there's some project work, we would see that. And then if we wanted to assign something like a regular time or overtime or things like that, I can do that. And then once I save that, it'll pop up in red of what I changed, and then we'll also see that it's pending changes, and I can either discard those, but then it will let me go through and submit that for approval. So because this was a project-based time that was being entered, that would go back to the project manager so they can make those adjustments, or they can approve that change. Right. Let's go back into the presentation. All right, and then this is again a quick snapshot of the personnel changes. This, again, just change somebody from one org unit to the other, and what their new report is. This is great if you're using an external payroll provider and you need to send them any sort of changes or updates. We can put that in the right file format that you want, send that off to them in an Excel, and they can just use that as the basis for updates to the payroll, their payroll processing. This is in the personnel administration work center. Yay, and all the best topics, supply chain management. I actually had to do 2 slides for SCM. It's very, very exciting in here. So some of the really cool things I put up top. So we've got, there's now, as the basis for SAP to start rolling out things like consigned inventory, or being able to reserve inventory for customers, they've started by adding a new logistics area type that's called, excluded from planning. So basically, if you have inventory that you want to reserve for a hot customer, or maybe you have inventory that sits out for like a fulfill by Amazon or something like that that you don't necessarily want to consider in your active inventory, but we manage it offline. We don't want it to pull out of the general population of inventory. We can set up a storage area or a logistics area and call that excluded from planning. So it's a really nice new feature. There's some a new screen enhancement on the pegged supply, where it's going to highlight to you where you might have supply challenges. So as you as you go through, run your MRP, generate your proposed work orders, and look at your material flow, it's going to and the peg supply is actually going to show you where you have supply challenges, and then it can allow you to do your rescheduling from the bottom up, so you can then get a better sense for when your production orders are going to be completed. I'll pop into that and do a demo of that as well. So there's also the service order pre-delivery and parts returned from a 3PL. Before, back in the day, if you had a third-party logistics provider, you weren't able to ship spare parts out to a customer prior to a service order being completed. And then additionally, obviously, if you couldn't send them out, you weren't able to actually return unconsumed parts from the service order back to the 3PL. You'd actually have to set it up like a regular warehouse if you were doing more of a service type operation. And I know this is very exciting for a lot of people, I hope. Cancellation of a production order sounds super simple, but up until now, going through and canceling a production order was not super easy, and now we can do that straight. And as long as the production order hasn't started, we can easily cancel it. On the cancellation, obviously, the only other thing to note, it doesn't irrevocably cancel the whole chain of events. So it basically, once you cancel that production order, it pops itself back into a production request. So it'll still be sitting out there, and then you can cancel that and then rerun your MRP. That will pop up. There's new multi-level visualization of the production bill of materials. So in the standard production bill of materials, the multi-level structure was listed, but they added a new feature in there where you can actually put the quantity that you require, and it basically will explode out the bill of materials with all the component quantities and things like that. So if you had to do potentially some pre-planning, I mean, you could do that from this multi-level visualization. They added into the physical count capability the product specification information. So until now, if you were a shop that used product spec and you were trying to do a count on that, those items weren't able to be used for the product spec within the cycle count. Now, if you're doing like just a standard inventory count or a logistics area count, or just overall a new count, you'll be able to see all of those items broken up by product spec. We got a couple new reports too. We've got a customer demand details report, and you can probably think about how useful this could be, just to be able to have overall, just an overall visual of what your overall customer demand is, and what the detail level is from an availability or a confirmation date standpoint. And then again, this was the physical inventory count items report. Before, you'd have to use the confirmation journal to get any details around your physical inventory count. Now you can see all the details related to that inventory count. And again, that's going to give you some nice, you get some really nice KPIs out of that, of looking at any variations or deviations from that physical inventory count. And then SAP added brand new KPIs. If you guys were on last week's Q&A Cafe, I had mentioned how SAP is continually rolling out new key performance indicators straight out of the box for you to start to consume. So we got 2 new ones in supply chain management. One is they're both based on the number of items. So if you want number of items received, number of shipped items, again, a great great KPI for measuring the efficiency of your warehouse. So being able to see how many things are picked during a given day, how many things are put away during a given day, being able to monitor that. So again, if you're looking at that and thinking about, hey, I know a lot of customers that I've worked with, they'll have different metrics that they pop up on either the shop floor, the warehouse, or the customer service department that kind of tick through the different metrics as they work through the day. This is one of those areas that you could utilize something like that to be able to show the operators how well they're doing. All right, next page. So the creation of iStock with your product specification during the goods receipt. So now when again, when the warehouse is doing a goods receipt or and then creating that iStock, they'll be able to see all the details of that product specification from that goods receipt screen. Again, really good if they have to drill into some details of that product spec and you're using spec characteristics like maybe color, size, things like that they have to visually look at and validate as they're bringing that in. Having them be able to pop up that product spec is great. Additionally, if you've got attachments on that product spec that didn't come over to the purchase order, they'll be able to bring up any of those attachments and documents as well. Some other just house cleaning stuff. There's various screens in supply planning and supply control where the source of supply wasn't listed. So it was just the ID, and you'd have to drill into the ID to see the description. So it was kind of hard to be able to, at a moment's notice, sort of drill into those details, most specifically around finished goods, so produced materials, and having to drill into that, the release production model, and not seeing the description of that release production model. Now you have a lot more flexibility in there, a lot more visual, keeping you from a lot of extra clicks to find out, do you have the right source of supply noted for, like, again, most specifically around produced materials or manufactured materials. They added a change log for stock transfer orders. There wasn't a changes screen in there. So now, again, that's obviously super important because you're going from place to place and you want to be able to see on both sides what people are doing. So now we can see all the changes to a stock transfer order and what happened to that entire history. There's a new option that they added in the logistics area that you can allow or not allow negative in-transit stock. We can upload serial numbers and customer returns. So if you're, a high volume serialized shop and you send out maybe, again, a batch of SIM cards or things like that, and then the whole batch comes back, obviously you can see how in customer returns in 2002, you'd have to key in each individual one or use a scanner to scan each of those in. Now we can just upload those into the customer return. This is actually a really cool new feature. And again, I'm not sure who's actually using this, but you now have the ability to return a serial managed item which was consumed in a production order. So if you think about, I always think large pieces of industrial equipment that have subcomponents or sub-assemblies that are also serialized that go out to the customer, but potentially can be pulled out of that piece of equipment and sent back for repair or have repair done on site or replaced. I know things like motors is a great example. Someone might pull a motor out, swap it out, bring it back in for repair, but you might actually do a replace before return sort of situation. Before that, you weren't able to actually bring that serial managed sub item in back into stock because it was consumed under a production order and it didn't like that that you actually consumed it under one, because of that one-to-one sort of relationship for that serialization, so we weren't able to bring that back in. So now it opens up a lot of possibilities for you, if you didn't have this before, to be able to do, you know, on-site repairs or in-house repairs of sub-assemblies. Additionally, kind of one of the things to note on this guy is if you are using registered products, to maintain the hierarchy. So again, thinking about that, you know, large piece of equipment, you have the ability to kind of manually create a hierarchy of registered products for that overall piece of equipment and all the sub-assemblies that might be covered underneath a warranty or things like that within the registered products area. So if you do return these, if you do return the serial managed item and bring it back into stock, so again, the situation that you're going to do a swap replacement and then a repair and put it back into stock, it will break the chain of that hierarchy that you have set up in the registered product, and you just have to go ahead and reassign that new serial number that you sent out as the replacement part or subcomponent. There's also the ability to check ATP for items in the kit. Again, I will tell you this, I saw it when I first came out in 2005, when I first got upgraded, and when I went back today to look at it, it's not there anymore. So I'm not sure if it was pulled out because of a bug or something. So just take note of it, that it's supposed to be there, but you might not see it in the visibility. So when you're actually doing, so if you have your kit items, so I've got my overall, again, going back to the example of the bed with 2 side rails, a headboard and a footboard. SAP currently looks at available to promise overall by how many kits it can produce from those different components. But what you might actually want to do, so from the outbound logistics area, if you just want to be able to visualize the availability of each of the different components, so what you have in stock, because maybe you might make choices to do partial kit shipments less than what SAP says is available. You can run through and actually say at the top level, you know, remove ATP check or suspend ATP check from the kit, and then it'll run it for each of the different components as if there were unique independent items. And then once you back out of that, it'll revert back. It doesn't keep that same availability calculation going, you know, once you back out of the screen. So it's really just more informational than anything, because obviously we all know you can't release a component of a kit one by one. You have to release the whole quantity of an entire kit. The next piece is the last part, is the this is a huge entire kind of big scenario that was just added, which is kit returns to stock or repair. So being able to, again, up until now, if you had a kit, you weren't able to, I think it was, you're not able to reference it to an original sales order. So it wasn't pulling potentially the right values and things like that from the original sales order. Now I can actually bring back the entire kit or a portion of the kit, bring it back into stock, reference the original sales order number, or I can pull it into a repair scenario. So I can then pull that in and actually post that to customer stock and then do a repair process. So there's a huge blog in there about how that works as well. All right, so let's jump in. I will, again, just jump into the system because I really like to see the system in action. And so the first piece is, let me see, back out of here. Oops. All right. So let's go into our supply chain master data, and I'll show you the 2 different areas. So there were 2 new features added into your supply chain master data, into your site and location. So the first piece is this little area, your negative stock details. Here's your new option that pops up in here. So for negative in-transit stock allowed, that's going to be your new option. And that is also available in data migration templates if you're setting up a new logistics warehouse or things like that. So you'll be able to see those. You have to have, obviously, logistics relevance checked to be able to check that, because if you don't have stock, you can't say you have negative stock. And then on the layout side, you'll see now we've got this option in here. Well, I just set up a new logistics area called reserved inventory. And then the way to activate that is going to be through your logistics use. So as you tag those different logistics areas or bins or whatever level of detail you're doing your warehouse setup, you'll have it set up for storage and then not relevant for planning. So what you'll actually see here, so as an example, again, I've got to set up this reserved warehouse, and then in my stock overview, I've got 500 units in my warehouse and then 300 tons of salt in my reserved inventory. And so when you're in supply planning, you'll now only see that available stock of the 500 tons. That's going to be removed from your reserved inventory. All right, this is the other kind of cool thing that I honestly, in my years, have never really played around with it too much. I typically always do my execution from supply planning, but this little nugget is going to be super helpful for if you've just got a large bill of materials and you are constantly replanning and reshuffling because of supply delays and things like that. As thinking about how I would set this up, from a planning standpoint, it's going to be the best to be able to, not release your production proposals until you have your materials in stock, so you can have that flexibility to switch a source of supply or reshuffle the production start date around or do some rescheduling. So you can select one or multiple items from this area to pop into the pegging area. I'm just going to pick this one as just an example. And so when it's from the supply control area and then the process production proposal. So everything as your output from your MRP. This is just a nice area rather than having to go item by item in the product planning details. I can open these guys up just directly from here and monitor the production proposals. But then I can jump into this peg supply, and you'll see this new little area that's this new column that's been introduced into this display. I can see a lot of value in the future, and hopefully they'll expand upon this and maybe put some exclamation points and stuff, exception warnings and things like that on the front screen, so you don't have to drill into these details. But I think this is a great first step, where as I'm planning my raw material components, my sub-assemblies to go into production, I can visually see if there's any sort of component delay based on confirmations from existing purchase orders or purchase proposals. So my lead time's long, and I'm not just on the onset. I have it set up, my MRP that doesn't allow availability in the past will automatically start to get some exceptions from the get-go of our planning. And then what you can do in here, you can either open the product planning details from the main item, so from your end item, or you can open up the details on the raw materials side. And then once you do on the open the material flow from the component, we'll open this up and we can see where it was pegged to. And then we've got our purchase proposal that's down here. We can look at it graphically. And then as a planner, you can notice that obviously we've already got, Houston, we've got a problem. We've got a forecast here. We're not going to make it. Our production proposal is supposed to start and finish on 6/5, but that critical component isn't going to get here till 6/9. So what I can do is actually reschedule from the bottom up. And what that'll do is it'll automatically move my, it'll move that production proposal out for me automatically and reschedule everything. So now everything's in line, and I'm not kind of blind to immediate delays before things even start. Right. And so the one trick on that when you're doing the reschedule bottom up, as I mentioned, you can only reschedule from the bottom up when you're actually in the material flow from the component that you're rescheduling. So you always want to do it from the bottom part of the screen. Okay. So again, that was a little new piece in there that I thought one of the cooler new features in there that give you a lot more control and visibility into supply planning. So we showed you that, the allow negative in transit stock, the multi-level bill visualization. So we'll jump into that guy. So again, from planning and production, master data, our production bill of materials. You've got your multi-level structure, which, as I mentioned, it's really just showing you the number of levels that you have to expand, obviously in here. And that's just, again, a super limited visualization of that. But if I go into multi-level visualization, I can actually bring up the product ID, a specific bill of material, a variant. I can put my quantity, I can make lots of changes to it. So if I am potentially even doing bill of material changes out into the future, I've got all that ability in there. And then when I expand this, so again, you've got the multi-level here, and then I can also pull in things like what level it's sitting at. And then again, if I'm doing any sort of pre-planning, things like that, we can just pop in that quantity and you can see overall sort of that bill of material explosion, as well as, again, all your visualizations of when you actually made changes to a component. All right. So in that other part, so I completely missed that. So fewer, let's see, fewer product ID. Let's see if I can get that to work. If I did like a bottom up view, I think that'll show me sort of where it's used as well. So I can see all the different items from a component level up to a finished good. Again, just another quick, nice little feature that was added. And you'll also see that not just from the production bill of materials, but there's also a common task that allows you to pop into there and then just do a real nice, easy add that to your shortcuts if it's something that you reference regularly. All right, let's see if there's anything else that I did want to show you on here. I think that might be all that I had. Get into another one here. All right, and then in CRM, there again, really, so things that I know myself have been asking for a while, and it just really, I think and hope it adds to your user happiness with things that you're like, God, why can't this just be? So two things that I find that I've been waiting for is one, the withdraw approvals. So you've got approvals set up on sales orders, service orders, contracts, invoices, and someone makes a mistake. You make a mistake on a sales order, you've got to physically call someone up, that's the approver. So you've got to look up who the approver is, where it's sitting in the status, have them reject it and send it back, or send it back for revision, and then you got to go back and make your changes. It just is cumbersome, to say the least. So now within any of those documents, somebody submits it, you can go back and withdraw it from approval. So we've seen it in other areas like purchasing, shopping carts, things like that, where you can withdraw that, make your adjustments, and then resubmit it. Now we've got that on the CRM side. So hopefully that'll be really nice. And you can do that from all the different areas within the within the sales order screen. So I can do it from the let's see, let's pop that up here. So within the sales orders in the sales orders area. You'll have your different actions in here. So actually, there is a withdraw price, not because it's not in approval, but you'll actually see if something is in approval, you'll have a new button that pops up here that says remove. It'll be in this area, kind of in your editable screen. It's also going to appear in your object work list. And then if you just pop into the sales order itself, again, you'll see another button that'll pop up in here that says withdraw from approval. So you've got 3 different places to be able to access that easily as you're going through that process. There are now at the line item level, you can set up your renewals for your contract line items. Again, great new feature if you have maybe something as a first year that you offer a free service contract, but you don't want that to renew automatically, but you have some sort of additional paid sort of contract on there that you do want to renew, or have different sets of rules for how a different line item on a contract is renewed. Those are now able to be set at the line item level. Right. There's now the ability to do a service quote as a follow-up for a customer return. Again, nice new scenario to sort of fill out and round out the repair process that exists in ByDesign, where someone sending back a piece of equipment. I use my example of my watch that I just sent in the other day, where they'll receive it, do their assessment on it, and they want to send out to the customer the quote for the work before I accept it and have them do it, because potentially it might be too expensive for the customer to want to do it, and might just crack it up to a loss. So now we have directly from that return, once I do receive it and do my evaluation on it, I can create a service quote that can then turn into the service order upon acceptance, and then tie that back into the return. So you get a really nice overall document flow for that. The kits return, which we talked about, being able to do any sort of kit or kit component return for either posting back to your own stock or for repair. This is the other one that I was like, why does this not happen? So sending the order confirmation automatically after approval. If you have sales order approvals turned on in your system, and you want to automatically obviously send an email confirmation out to the customer. If it goes through approval, it wouldn't get sent out. Someone would have to continually monitor a work list and status of their orders that were in approval and had been approved, and then manually go back in and click the button to go and send the order confirmation to the account. So again, multiple clicks, lots of hand holding, lots of overseeing that has to be done when you have that approval process. And I know in a lot of cases, people they weren't using the approvals only because that was somewhat of a cumbersome process. So now basically, as soon as the manager or whoever does the approval of the sales order, that confirmation automatically gets sent out to the customer. Customer returns for spare parts. That's another great area that we've got. If you did send spare parts out on a service order and it wasn't as they were consumed during if they were just like set aside. Example again, my guy comes out and fixes my heater and he brings me new filters. If potentially they get consumed on the sales or service order, I get charged for them, but I find that they're the wrong size. Before, we couldn't return those back into ByDesign. Now we can do the spare part return from the customer. And then there's just a enhanced service quote search. If you do have a service quote out, there were some fields that were lacking from there, like a PO number and account ID and one other field. They've now added those in to be able to do searching for that. So one area that it would show is just in your sales orders. So the new quote area, either from your returns area, you'll see that you've got, basically if I want to look at, as an example, all my returns for my repairs, I can look and see the different items that I've got. This is, again, a nice visualization here of being able to see, where it came back in on. If it is in for repair, we're showing it as externally owned quantity of stock. And then what I can do is just do a follow-up service quote. So one of the things to note in here, you'll get, as you're creating these things, you'll get warnings on here that says the copying of the item isn't possible. And that's because, in this case, when you're doing a return of a normal item, if you will, the norm item type that's in, that goes through standard sales order processing, that doesn't copy over to the logistics area or to the service order. So you'll always get that warning, because on the service side, you're basically saying, I'm not putting that part back in here. I have to start entering what my bill of material is for the service. So we can just start to enter the service for this particular item. Obviously pull in my details. I can see where the service is going to be done. And then if I wanted just to make note as well of one or many types of my items, I can add in any of the products. Again, they can just be a reference product in here. Oops. And then I have multiple items. I know it's not a one-to-one type of relationship, so I don't have to have one service quote for one item. If I have a multitude of items that are coming back in to be repaired, like in the example of a kit, I can put those on there, and they don't have to be registered or not. And so I can just create that guy. And here again, you'll notice, there we go, there's that withdraw from approval option in there. That's going to show me from my list if it needs to go through the approval process. Right, so that'll be sitting there, and then once the item does come back in, I can convert that from the service quote area into, so I can see then my service quote is going to hang out here, and I'll see that open, and then I can just do a quick follow-up service order and do my confirmations against that for my return. All right, I think we're coming up almost to the end here. Let's see if there's anything else that I wanted to show. Nope. The last couple things in here on Supplier SRM, not a whole heck of a lot in here. One, they're adding a lot of new kind of more feature function stuff to really being able to restrict or add approval processes. If you weren't aware, in the last couple of releases, they added the ability to put an approval onto the supplier creation. So now if somebody is onboarding a new supplier, it can go through any sort of approval workflow. And then they added some new function in there actually to improve it a little bit, that the approver can go in and actually edit the information. Again, before, when it was first released, it went through that same sort of weird approval where you'd have to send it back for revision and things like that. Now and you can kind of think about how you potentially can set up a really nice workflow for when multiple people have to touch a supplier record. So again, maybe the purchasing department is putting in all the details related to the contacts and the address and the product information and things like that, where someone in the AP department needs to put in the bank details and all that other good stuff. So you can actually have a multi-step sort of approval that really acts more as like a stopgate process to make the changes and additions to that supplier master that they need to. But one of the other features that they added in this release was to restrict the maintenance of the supplier bank details. And I'll show you that as well. And then the posting, and so if you have a recurring invoice too, they now restricted that restricted the ability to change the posting date after saving an invoice that was created from a recurring invoice. So there is, let me go back in here just to show you the screenshot. So this is also another authorization piece for you too. If you do want to activate this, there is this new function, new Work Center view called Supplier Bank Details Authorization. So you want to add or remove it as you see fit to your different users. And so let's go in as my financial dude. All right, and if we go to the supplier base, what will happen, it doesn't preclude your users from seeing the bank details, they just can't maintain it. So if I go into, again, you notice that as I went through my filter, or as I went through and opened up my items, there's like a little gray bar that pops out. All the new global data privacy restrictions that have been added in will pop up if you have instituted any portion of that that new feature. And there are things that are restricted, the system will alert the user that there are areas that have some data privacy restrictions. If I go into just like, again, the financial data of my option of my supplier, and I go into the bank data, you'll notice now that they can add new banks in, but it's not gonna add it or append it on to this line item at all. This is all grayed out for this person that can't maintain. They can view it any way that they want to, but they are not able to add the row or remove any of the information. Okay. And I think I have one more slide in here. Mobile. All right, two new features. One, and we'll pop these guys up. They have merged the mobile approvals app with the standard mobile app. So let's pop into here. And then there's also a new administrator option in here as well. So for your IT guys that are always on the road or down in a closet somewhere doing maintenance, they can go ahead and they can pop into their emails and administrate users straight from the system. So let's go into just, this is the standard app. Let's go into, looks like he's got one. All right, and so based on the authorization, obviously all the different tiles that are in your mobile app will come and go as you see. Let me see, why is, oh, there we go. So now under the home area, you see these manager, approver, rejector, accept. So it's the same, again, the same look and feel almost. It's a little bit, again, a little bit lighter in nature, but all the same capabilities that you would have in the standard manager app. It looks exactly the same, that you can go ahead and do your swipe right, swipe left for your approvals, just like you would normally. Yeah, the only thing is, like, in the actual app, I think you actually can do an approval straight from this header area. Doesn't necessarily make sense that you'd want to do that, so I think it's a little bit better of the control here. And then if I log in as more the administrator, you'll now notice there's a new option for the administrator. So again, based on the authorizations, you see all your different options on here because they have access to do everything. But now you can actually see you've got two options in here, your business users and your support and technical users. So if anyone, they can see anybody that's locked and they can go ahead and unlock them on automatically, or you can just look at all of your users and pick one and then lock it, either the user lock or the password lock. Okay. So again, nice new feature. Someone's in a quandary in the middle of the night trying to get some work done, and their user got locked. You just call up your admin in bed and have them just roll over and grab the phone and do it, rather than having to log into the system and get up out of bed. So that, I think, takes us to the end of this area, which is good timing because we're just at the hour. I also included in here so you can get a sense for the fact that SAP is listening. If you kind of compare everything that we went through today and all of these customer influence topics, pretty much every single thing, almost everything that came out in this release is attributable to something that you as the user community have either submitted to be voted on or voted on. I can't stress enough to continuously go out to that influence area, look at the new things, get on the feed so you can just kind of review them on a weekly basis and see what's out there, go out and vote. We need 20 votes to get anything kind of considered for the roadmap now. So they actually do a lot of stuff. Like, you'll see some things in here that aren't 20. Some of them, you know, they're either older or they're similar to something else, that they've combined them. So it's not always a hard and fast rule of the 20 for review. So do get out there and vote and review what's out there. I know we are constantly adding things that you suggest to us, and then you'll be able to visit that. So with that, I don't know, Kayla, were there any questions on the chat?
I do see a question here, Laura.
Okay.
Do you see it in your box? It's quite long.
How do I bring up the whole thing here? Has SAP started to last short ship of kit component? No, I wish. Yeah, no, the sales kit component is, the sales kit components are tied directly to that kit item, so you can't do a short ship. So if you think you're supposed to ship 10 and only 8 wind up in stock, you can only ship 8 kits out. And I wish they would change. As one of the systems I used to use, they had both kits and groups. The kits were tied just like that, but groups, you were able to kind of swap in and out of components and do partial shipments. So I know I have put that into influence. So I can send that to you. I think did that come from Laura? Yeah, I can send you kind of the link to that so you can vote on it. Okay. Any other questions? Like I said, I'm always around. I think hopefully by now everybody that's on here has my email address. So if you have questions, or if there's anything that I didn't go through in detail, some of the topics are pretty deep with a lot of the kits, the returns and things that take a lot of kind of walking through. So if you wanted to go through any of those scenarios in more detail, or if you're having trouble setting those up, if you aren't using them today, just please reach out to me. And I will, and we can set up some time.
Great.
Okay. All right, great, perfect.
All right,
Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Till next week, June 3rd, Wednesday, reports abounding is our topic. So please register for that.
Come join me. We'll be making dashboards together. It'll be wonderful.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laura. Have a good day, everyone.